today protest outside the Education Department in Pretoria. This is to protect their mother tongue education. The forum goes on to say that the memorandum contains information about the department's negligence. But to tell us more on this, we are joined by AfriForum's Youth Chief Executive, Ernst Roets. Good morning and welcome. What exactly are you not happy with the Education Department?
Well, in South Africa there's a whole issue about education, and we recently heard again that there's a problem with the matric results coming out so far about students not performing as well as they should be performing. But this problem is on tertiary institutions as well as in schools. And our main concern, especially at tertiary institutions, at universities and so forth, is about funding. The sum, to give you an example, the sum that is made for funding for a university like the University of Witwatersrand, which gives only one language, is exactly the same as the sum that is given to a university like the University of Pretoria, for example, which emphasizes on 3 different languages. And the Constitution also emphasizes that language, well, firstly there are 11 official languages in South Africa, and those languages should be promoted. And if there are 11 languages and we want people to be treated equally, we would like to see that universities are supported if they want to give students the opportunity to be able to study in their language.
So now, with all this research that you've done, obviously seeing that what happens with the different varsities, what do you want the government to do?
Well, like I said, the first and foremost important thing is the issue of funding. We want more funds to be available for multilingual universities, because there's lots of funding involved to be able to give the student classes in their languages. The other issue is the issue of policy. If you look at the Constitution, the one issue on education that is emphasized is the issue of mother tongue education. But if you compare that to the mission and the vision of the Department of Education, that is the one thing that is not mentioned in the mission and vision, is the issue of language. So we want that to be added in there as well.
Now, having looked at these sort of issues and obviously trying to approach the government, what are the universities doing about it? Have you approached Pretoria University, and have you spoken to the people that are in charge there?
Yes, actually we've had a lot of instances at the University of Pretoria where I'm a student. We spoke to the management and everybody actually that can be spoken to, and at the end of the day it comes down to the fact that there's a problem with resources. So there are issues at universities about students enrolling and registering to study in a particular language, and when they get there they are being told, sorry, we don't have enough resources, you're going to have to study in another language. And that is something that we don't want in an education system.
Now, most of the major subjects, especially at varsity level, right, are taught either in English. Now, we've got 11 official languages, you even said this, you know. How do we then start accommodating everyone?
Well, I think that is part of the problem that needs to be addressed. It's good to be able to say that we have 11 official languages, and we don't have a problem with that. But being able to implement that on ground level is a whole other ballgame. But we would like, I think the first step is not to create a sort of a precedent or a situation where one language is being promoted
above others.
So we would like to see that all languages can be treated equally from the start.
Now, we need to be able to obviously compete globally. Well, now, if you say that we must now start teaching in mother tongue languages, how do we then go to the US if you've learned your whole subject or your whole degree in Xhosa, Zulu, or even Afrikaans for that matter? How does that student then fit globally?
That is exactly a very important point. The issue of international competitiveness. That is often raised at universities, but very interesting if you look particularly about international competitiveness. If you look at international universities across the world, some of the universities which are rated the top universities in the world don't necessarily give English lectures. They give lectures in Japanese or in French lectures or Greek or whatever. So in able to be internationally competitive, mother tongue education plays a more important role than being educated in English, if that's not your main language.
Well, the international community at the moment is trying to find some sort of source of communication, so that we obviously have peace and stability, and everybody can be able to chat. Technology is doing this, the web is doing this, everyone is doing this. Now, where does then the mother tongue fit in when there's trying to be a global drive that we all understand with each other?
Well, I think that is the whole the point exactly that needs to be addressed. there is globalization, and we're talking about a global village and everything, and that is something that you can't ignore that. So we would want people to be able to express themselves in different languages, and it'd be great if people can speak more than 2, like 3 languages, and African languages and other languages. But I think still, despite that, we still need to have a situation where people can be able to study in their mother tongue, and then be able to express themselves in another language.
Let's very quickly. Today you're going to protest. You're approaching the education department. If nothing is done, what happens? Or if something is done, what happens after this protest? What do you plan on doing after this?
Well, this is not the whole issue today is not. It's not an isolated protest. Actually, it's part of a whole campaign. We from AfriForum Youth, we have a campaign for mother tongue education, but we're not the only role player in this regard. So later this year, I know student councils from across the country will be contacting the Minister of Education, and they will ask if they can have a meeting with the Minister, particularly on the issue of mother tongue education. So we would also like to give momentum for that. So that is the one issue. This is not, like I said, an isolated issue where if our demands are not met, then we will just say, okay, fine. So there's definitely a campaign that is being driven in this regard.
Ernst, thank you very much for joining us here on Morning News today.
Thank you very much. It's been fun.
That is Ernst Roets, AfriForum's Youth Chief Executive. Now going to